Hey there, Commander Spellington people. Today I got something a little bit different for you, and that is a Digimon trading card game deck profile. I'm not necessarily saying this is the most meta deck ever, but this is a deck based around my favorite Digimon and my favorite playstyle of mid-range, and it's focused on ShineGreymon, specifically the yellow one from BT2. So, if you really like ShineGreymon, really like his playstyle, and you're not such a big fan of Digimon Frontier, and you don't want to play all the hybrid stuff, well, this is the deck profile for you because I barely touch the hybrids. I just use the hybrids that I think are good in and of themselves. I'm not trying to play their strategy because I really still think that ShineGreymon's strategy is more fun and more effective. And besides, he's my all-time favorite Digimon, and I just want to use him. In my playtesting, this deck's done pretty great against all kinds of decks, from casual to competitive. I think the biggest weakness used to be that I used to rely too much on my opponent attacking me. That I fought a deck where my opponent just didn't attack me, and I realized I gotta have some options for if that happens, which this deck now has. So this deck really tries to answer anything and everything that can be thrown at it, and for that I just really love playing it. So without further ado, let's get into it. We get 4 copies of ShineGreymon. Because this game's art style is so great, I can never choose which artwork to play, so I usually split it up 2 and 2, halfway for each artwork. But yeah, this is the only level 6 we're running, and that is just because he's the only level 6 we need against a lot of decks. And this really takes your own knowledge of your opponent's deck in order to be able to make this decision. You can just play slow and defensive and just wipe out all their level 6s and stuff. And once you do that enough times, they'll not be able to set up against you. And sort of by attrition, you'll win. But at the same time, you can use this guy to wipe out big fields and attack things because his attack's going to be so high that really he can be a defensive or offensive option. It just depends on how you want to use him. And when I said this deck's mid-range, it's exactly what I mean, where it can be extremely defensive or extremely offensive. Completely comes down to how you play it. Moving on to level 5s, we got 4 copies of RizeGreymon. And, you know, he combos so well with the deck strategy, especially by giving a crit to something that has such huge power. It's a really good combo, as well as putting up your Tamers for free. Basically, yeah, there's nothing else you'd want to really do other than evolve into this guy. Although we do have an Angewomon as well from the structure deck. And that's just because, you know, having that surprise heal while also being able to climb up to our big guy, this is super useful. And, you know, we have 4 level 6s and 5 level 5s, and you might be thinking that's kind of weird. How are we doing that? And you'll see, you know, just stay tuned. As we go through things, it's all going to make a lot more sense. The main thing is we don't want to be bricks, so the Digimon that we can only use later on, we're playing less of, because we have a greater chance to see them as we go on through the game. With the level 4s, we got 4 copies of Baluchimon, and I talked about drawing into things. Well, this guy's going to help us draw into things. Not to mention that this is the best way to set up with RizeGreymon. You know, you're going to play this guy. He's very cheap, lets you draw into your RizeGreymon, draw on the Tamers, draw into your ShineGreymon. Baluchimon really is something this deck absolutely loves to see. Next up, it's the only hybrid thing we're running at all, and that is 4 copies of Kazemon. And, you know, if we're running ShineGreymon and we're running 16 Tamers in this deck, this thing is going to combo with that so well. It's kind of self-explanatory. It's really nice to be able to evolve a Tamer to draw and set up a RizeGreymon, go into ShineGreymon. It adds an element of surprise and unexpected aggro that comes out of nowhere that this deck really appreciates. Not to mention the fact that obviously if your Tamers are all unsuspended because you ShineGreymon the last turn, well, that means they're all just going to turn into attacks with Kazemon. Moving on to level 3s, surprise, surprise, it's a purple Digimon. We're playing 4 Tapirmon, and that's because our only eggs are 4 copies of DemiMeramon. So we're going to run a little bit of an aggro strategy by getting in some early hits and then doing a sort of draw 2, drop 1. This really helps us set up with exactly what we need. The thing you don't want to do in this deck is brick, because it takes too long to unbrick. So not only does this add very nicely appreciated aggression in a deck that can otherwise play a bit slower defensive, but also unbrick and setup that is just a big deal. Next up, we got 3 copies of the Patamon that searches Tamers. And I have the worst luck ever of this guy, seriously. 16 Tamers, and I just often whiff. But what can you do? Obviously, adding a bunch of Tamers can be super useful earlier in the game. You know, this is kind of like an early game play. But it's nice to be able to evolve him to a level 4 in case you need to. Like I talked about, where sometimes your opponent's just not going to attack you. If they are keen to your strategy, they might cause you to play a bit differently. So having the option to have a yellow level 3 is actually kind of nice. I used to not run any yellow level 3s, and I would just use the purple, but the Patamon's definitely proven its worth. So we are playing a mainly yellow deck, and that's why, and that's where the options come in, because obviously most option cards can just activate their main effect in security. So a lot of the way that we're interacting with our opponent is with security effects, such as for Wyvern's Breath and for Fly Bullet. So, having the option to have purple eggs means we meet the color requirement to activate our purple option cards. So Fly Bullet and Wyvern's Breath means we have the optimal way to take out anything on the field just like that. I'd like to see some sort of AoE removal, kind of like Red has Gigastorm for one of these colors, but for now we just got to stick with this. Against the modern meta of hybrid, having AoE removal is really good for their level 4s and 5s, as well as getting rid of all their Bokemons and stuff. And I think the meta of 4x Gaia Force to activate in security is becoming a little bit outdated because of that, with AoE destruction or removal being the new meta. But, this still works great for now, especially with so many chances to proc in the security. Plus, we're playing yellow with a decent amount of heals, so we can still get a pretty great chance to have at least 1 or 2 of these happen per duel. Next, we got 1 copy of Reinforcing Memory Boost. I mean, it's still just as good as it ever was. It's just really wish it was at 4. Either way, card's too good not to play, really. Next, we got 1 copy of Jack Raid. Security effects are really nice and defensive, and it's really easy to keep it viable through color requirements, because all you got to do is have your egg up in the egg zone and your purple's met. So this can help us do some unexpected pushing that they would not expect from us otherwise. Especially because of all the drop draws and stuff, we will eventually get a pretty big grave. Moving on to the Tamers, this is a nice sizable stack of 16 Tamers. Of course, we got 4 copies of TK, and not only is this a memory fixer, but it also helps us on brick, but it also helps us set up our security to be something that is just terrifying to attack into, as well as take the cards out of security that we don't want to be in there. Just a fantastic card, and a deck that wants to have as many Tamers as possible. It's great that 4 of them can be him, and it's great that 4 of them can be TK and Kari. This card just makes it so your opponent doesn't want to attack you, but in order to play the game, they have to. And in many circumstances, you might get rushed in this deck, and then setting up these will give you enough memory to recover afterwards. Plus, the other effect is just actually so underrated, so good. If you have like 3 of these in a Tapirmon, you can attack the Tapirmon into the 1-cost evolution blockers, and then take it out, make them choose between suicide on Tapirmon or not blocking at all. This is just such a great card. 3 Kari Kamiya. It's a bit expensive, 3 cost to get 1 memory back, but we're working with yellow Tamers and BT7. This is the best we got. So we're playing it. Besides, it's a bit more reliable than this later in the game, because late game they're not going to have that many security. You'll probably be tied, especially once you start healing. So being at 3 or less is a bit more reliable later in the game. Lastly, we got 4 copies of this TK for the structure deck. The effect can happen. It can be okay. It's honestly, if it was a vanilla Tamer, we'd still be running 4 copies just because it's 2 cost. That's the only reason I'm not running Izumi Orimoto, because she's 3 cost. So I just much rather just go for the 2 cost. Setting up these Tamers is so nice. Seeing them is great because you just play them, and that's a Tamer set up ready for your ShineGreymon nuke, and it only costs you 2. I think I'm definitely going to replace these for Suzy Wong when it comes out in the EX01 set, because the draw is going to be huge for this deck. As you can see, I'm already committing the draw quite a bit as it is. Well, sub for Spub if you like what you saw here. And who knows, maybe we'll do some more Digimon deck profiles in the future, because this is actually probably the best game. The best training card game ever made, quite possibly. It's really fighting Vanguard and Classic Yu-Gi-Oh! For that title, and I'm very impressed with Bandai for making, like, how do you enter into the TCG market and then end up making the best game? Like, just congrats, guys. Not only that, but you had such a great source material to work with. I really hope that the upcoming One Piece TCG from them doesn't detract from this, because One Piece is fucking stupid. And why would you make a TCG after it? But yeah, I really hope that the Digimon card game continues to maintain this decent balance of power that it's had, and continue to introduce interesting mechanics in Digimon, perhaps a burst mode in the future even. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, hit that sub for Spub button down below. Comment what you think about this deck, and who knows, maybe I'll just interact with you in the comments myself. I'll catch you guys later.